Hi, in this video I'm going to walk you through some of the basic steps in using blueletterbible.org. I'll be following the guide that is posted on the course site under the resources folder. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll walk you through some basic steps. Okay, so this is under the resources tab on the course site, using blueletterbible.org to perform a simple word study. This first part uses an example from the Gospel of Mark, and the second part uses an example from Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians. It's not an example from our first exercise, but it's from the same letter. So we're going to look at that one. They're very similar. They follow the exact same steps, but we'll focus on this second example. So in this example, using 1 Thessalonians 1:4, we'll study the use of the Greek word for the word chosen. So first we want to look and see, what does 1 Thessalonians 1:4 say? So I'm going to go to Blue Letter Bible. I don't really usually care to use the KJV. I'm going to go to the RSV. You could also use the New American Standard Bible. That would be a good choice. And I'm going to look up 1 Thessalonians 1:4 and see what I get. Okay, so here we go. For we know, brethren, beloved by God, that he has chosen you. So this word chosen is the one that I want to particularly study. I want to see, well, what does that mean that God has chosen you? Is that a word that Paul uses a lot of places? Is it unique to this particular passage? What's distinctive about it? So going back to my steps, I'll be toggling back and forth now between Blue Letter Bible and these steps for exegesis. Okay, so the second step is to enter the verse or passage. We've done that. Beside the verse, click on the tools icon and scroll down till you find the word you're looking for. And then click on the hyperlink prefaced with the letter G. In this case, it is G1589. That's a lot to remember, but you'll be able to just toggle back and forth yourself. So we're going to go to the tools icon, click on that, scroll down till we find the hyperlink prefaced with the letter G. So here's our verse, 1:4, click on tools. By the way, just to mention, I'm using the browser Chrome, which Blue Letter Bible works really well with Chrome. It doesn't work so well with Edge. I haven't tried it with Safari or Firefox. Okay, so I'm looking for the word chosen, and actually it doesn't occur because what you get over in this column is a very, very literal rendering, and so sometimes very slightly, but it seems fairly clear that the word that the RSV is translating as chosen is here in this very literal rendering being translated with the word choice. So now I'm at the word that I'm interested in, the word that gets translated as chosen in the RSV. Here is what I'm talking about, the hyperlink prefaced with the letter G. This set of hyperlinks all refer to entries in Strong's Concordance. So Strong's Concordance of the Bible has both the Old and New Testaments of the Protestant Bible, and every single word that occurs is keyed with a certain number. So this is, the New Testament is G and G1589. This is word 1589. So I'm going to click on that. It takes me to another page that has a whole bunch of information. But before I begin looking at it, I want to be following my steps fairly precisely. So let's go back to the steps page. And so we've just finished step 3. Now we're on step 4. Notice that the page that comes up offers basic information about the word at the top of the page. So in this particular instance, we learned that ekloge is, and needs to be a space there, let me fix that. Ekloge is a feminine noun from the Greek word eklegomai. Eklegomai is another Greek word. And you can make a note of this one as well. It turns out in this particular instance, you wouldn't really need to go look at that. But when you have a noun and a related verb, sometimes, especially if one or the other doesn't occur very often in the New Testament, maybe it only occurs 1 or 2 times, you might want to look at the verb that's related to it, because it could also tell you some things. So the word choice, the noun, is related to the word choose, eklegomai. If you can't find enough on choice, you might want to go look at choose. So that's why I say, pay attention to that related word. And going back here, so ekloge is our noun, feminine noun, says it right there, and it says that the root word, it comes from this verb, eklegomai. But we're going to just make a note of that. In this instance, we won't really have to look at it. Scroll down a bit. Let's see what comes next on our steps. Okay, we're on 5. Next, you will see Greek inflections of ekloge. Now, let's first talk about what an inflection is. An inflection of a noun, inflections of a noun are how it appears in different number and case combinations. Greek is a case language, meaning that words take on different endings and different forms in order to say what they're doing in the sentence, whereas English really goes by word order. But we do have a little bit of a case system in English. We use, for example, often an S to make a word plural or some other kind of internal change to make a word plural. And we often use an apostrophe either at the end of a word that's plural or followed by an S, if it's a singular word, to show that that word is functioning differently. So just to give an example here in this text, we've got the English word girl, the English word girls, the English word girl apostrophe S, and girls apostrophe. Those are all different inflections of that one word girl. So when I'm just trying to explain to you what an inflection is so that it doesn't throw you off. If you don't know Greek, you're not really going to have to worry too much about inflections because it's beyond what you can do with the English. I'm simply explaining what it is so that you know what you're looking at. In the Greek, in the case of someone who doesn't know Greek, what's really going to jump out at you is that this word occurs 7 times in the New Testament. M, G, N, T. I don't know what the M is, but G and T is Greek New Testament. So 7 times in 3 unique inflections or forms. But really what you're interested in is that it occurs 7 times. So you can look at those 7 occurrences. Okay, so going back to our steps, we've just now finished with step 5. So scroll down a bit. Step 6, next comes an entry from Vine's Expository Dictionary. This can be useful. Vine's Expository Dictionary is an older resource. I think it was maybe in the 40s or something like that. There's a Wikipedia article linked there if you're interested in where Vine's Expository Dictionary comes from. But it's, you know, I use it with a little bit of a grain of salt. It is a resource produced by, I don't know who Vine was, but it tends to reflect a somewhat more evangelical perspective. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm simply saying you need to know it's one person or one group of persons' perspective. So it's not gospel truth. But it still can be useful. So go ahead and take a quick look at it. Vine's Expository Dictionary, click on it. And you can see here that it tells you, it's kind of just a dictionary. It tells you a little bit about what are some of the ways that this word gets used and makes a point that it's related often to what is known in Christian theology as the doctrine of election. Okay, so that's Vine's, just telling you what it is. Back to our steps. After Vine's comes the outline of biblical usage. Very much like Vine's, it can give you a quick orientation. Again, as with Vine's, it's a person's perspective. Don't take it as gospel truth. Go ahead and look at it, but the whole purpose of having you look at the actual occurrences of that word in the New Testament is for you to be able to make your own independent judgment, one that might bring you to critique something you see in Vine's or in the outline of biblical usage or in the commentary that you're using. So we scroll on down and we come next to the Thayer's Greek lexicon. So that's, I think, the next thing on my steps here. Yeah, okay, number 8. Thayer's lexicon, I think that's probably one of the most useful tools on the page. The other one is just the straight concordance at the end, which we'll see next after Thayer's. But right now, focusing on Thayer's, it's a lexicon. A lexicon is really kind of a fancy dictionary. What it does, though, when you're dealing with the Bible is it shows you cross-references within the Bible. It's not a concordance. A concordance will show you every usage of that term in the Bible. A lexicon doesn't do that. It shows you some uses. So let's just think for a moment about how a dictionary is created. Imagine that you're working in a country with a language that has never had a dictionary prepared. Okay, so maybe under what circumstances that would happen, I'm not sure. But certainly in former days, missionaries faced this. But in any case, you're in a country, there's a spoken language, or maybe even a written language, but there's no dictionary. What do? Well, you start collecting words, and then you start collecting uses of those words. And say you've got a word that seems to have something like the concept of choice, okay, choose. So what you're going to do is you're going to try to find a bunch of places, maybe textual representations or spoken representations that you've made note of, where that word choose or choice or chosen, whatever form it comes in, whatever inflection occurs. And you're going to try to begin to analyze those and catalog them and figure out what is the range of ways that this particular word is being used. And, with certain words, it might be a fairly narrow range, but with other words, maybe there are quite a few figurative uses. Maybe maybe it can be used in conjunction with different verbs or prepositions. It could be quite a variety of ways it's used. And so as a dictionary author, you're trying to find all those different uses and catalog them, and then construct a set of definitions. So I go through this process just so that you know that when you're using a dictionary or lexicon, you're not written something that was given from on high and chiseled in stone tablets. You're using something that is a product of one or a team of persons' intelligent analysis of what they've encountered with regard to the actual use of that term. So that gives you maybe a bit of pause, or I hope it does, not simply to take what you read in a lexicon or a dictionary as gospel truth. Again, these are people's constructions of how the word is being used. So anyway, all that said, Thayer's is pretty useful. It's an older lexicon. It was first published in 1889. It's now in the public domain. There are certainly newer lexicons that do some things better, but it's not bad. So it's definitely worth taking a look at it. It's going to help you see how a pretty intelligent person who I assume had help, and it's probably been revised, I'm not sure, made sense of this particular word. So I'm going to click Show All, and this is a relatively short entry. Some of them are quite long. And he gives you here, just as you would in an English dictionary, there's a breakdown. So the act of picking out or choosing, the making of a choice, if you will, or the thing or person chosen, what you choose when you make a choice. So you can see even in English how it really has both of those kinds of meanings. It can either mean actually choosing something or that thing which you have chosen. Now, but beyond just giving you those general meanings, they give you all of these examples. And what's really nice about the way this is laid out is that you can hover your cursor over it and it will pop up the verse in question. So you can quickly go through this and just check out what verses Thayer has used to formulate this particular interpretation of the word. There's Romans 9:11, Romans 11:28. This particular word, as we've seen, only occurs 7 times in the New Testament. I think all 7 of them are actually used here. If you look at a lexicon entry for a word that is used many more times than that, maybe 100 times, obviously it's not going to put in, maybe it's not obvious, but I'm telling you, it's not going to put in every single use in this definition. It's going to choose some representative samples, and it will highlight those, and you'll be able to look and see how it's used. Now we come, though, next step to the concordance results using the RSV. Okay, so that's, again, tied with Thayer's, the most useful part of this entire entry. So what this is, before I get to the concordance results, just so you know, this is not the concordance results. What this is an index of every passage that Thayer quoted in his entry. Now, if it, as in this case, every passage that uses the word is quoted, you're in luck. It's going to be identical to the general concordance results. But if you're looking at the entry for one of those words that occurs 100 times and there's only 20 references, then you might really get misled if you think that this is the full set of results. of the concordance search. This is only whatever appeared in the entry for Thayer. Okay, but now we scroll down and we see here concordance results using the RSV. And here is every use of that word using the Greek concordance to the KJV. So it's reliable. You can count on it, even though they're going back and forth between different versions. It's using Strong's concordance, which is using the KJV. So Acts 9:15, the Lord said to him, for he is a chosen instrument of mine to carry my name before the Gentiles and kings. Here it seems to be functioning almost as an adjective. Romans 9:11. I'm actually going to be more interested in the following ones because I'm interested in Paul. I'm doing my exegesis on 1 Thessalonians 1:4. So I'm really interested in Paul's distinctive take on this word. What does Paul think that ekloge means? So we're going to really look at his uses. So Romans 9:11, though they were not yet born and had done nothing, either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works, but because of his call. So here, election, I believe, is the word that is translating ekloge. How about 11:5? So too, at the present time, there is a remnant chosen by grace, maybe related to that idea of election. Romans 11:7. What then? Israel failed to obtain what it sought. The elect, this is that second meaning of Thayer, the ones who were chosen, obtained it, but the rest were hardened. Romans 11:28. Notice that we've got a real cluster here in Romans 11, which is where Paul is talking about the future of Israel. So who are the chosen people, right? So it's not surprising that this word chosen is popping up a lot in Romans 11. As regards the gospel, they are enemies of God for your sake, but as regards election, they are beloved by God for the sake of their forefathers. 1 Thessalonians 1:4, our passage. For we know, brethren, beloved by God, that he has chosen you. Now, what I'm hoping is that after you've run through the Thayer entry and looked at these other uses of the word ekloge in the Pauline letters, you're beginning to get a sense of the resonance of the word, that it's not a randomly chosen word. It actually has some connotations around this idea of God calling people, choosing them, maybe even before the foundation of the world. So when he says it to the Thessalonians, it's a theologically freighted word. If you were doing an exegesis on this passage, you might want to elaborate a bit on Paul's use of this particular word, how it's an important word for him, and maybe look at one or two of the cross references that we just saw from, particularly from Romans, to help cast some light on what is going on in 1 Thessalonians. Now, bear in mind, Thessalonians was the first of Paul's letter. It was written before Romans. Nonetheless, generally, I think Paul is relatively consistent in his use of words, and I think it's legitimate to, shed light on how it is functioning in 1 Thessalonians 1:4 by looking also at how it is functioning in Romans. So that takes us to the end of our steps oh no, not quite. One last step here. So what I'm saying is that when you're taking your notes, you're probably going to want to keep notes about some other places where there are cross references, so that when you get to writing your answers to the exegetical questions, you have that at your disposal. You don't have to go reinvent the wheel and do it all over again. So the way you do that is you look through the sample, the occurrences in the concordance results, and then you'll see this little box here. This is just a screenshot, so it's not letting me click it. But right there to the left of the citation is a little box, and you can click on the little box next to any of the particular verses that you want. So say I thought, well, I really want to quote maybe, or just at least remember, Romans 11:7 and Romans 11:28. So I've clicked on those boxes. Now I'm going to go up here to copy and click on copy. And it says copy. You want to see that little black bubble pop up that says copied, otherwise it didn't work. So you copy it, and now it's on your it's there on your tablet or on the computer, so that when your clipboard is the word I'm looking for. When you go to your word processor, you can just paste it right into your word processor, into your notes that you're taking. So that really runs you through all of the steps. Looking at our exegetical exercise, let's see, I think this is it. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I want to show you how these instructions are relevant for this, okay? So here in 1 Thessalonians 3, this is just really looking for a summary of what is the context in which this particular letter is being written. What is Paul doing? What is he aiming to do for the Thessalonian Christians in this letter? And to get that, you need to read at least 1 Thessalonians 1 to 3, if not the whole letter, but then also some of the other resources I suggest. Brackey, the lecture on audio, Raymond Brown. You could look at the introduction for a New Testament study Bible that you might have. And then I've also included on that exercise number 203, I've included some lecture notes that are from lectures that I've given on 1 Thessalonians in the past. And you can use these just as you would any other source. If you use them, just footnote lecture notes on 1 Thessalonians by Susan R. Garrett. But here you can see I'm giving you straight out some circumstances surrounding the founding of the Thessalonian church. So there's plenty of resources for you to draw on to answer that question. It does not have to be a long answer. It could be a few sentences. This next one, number 2, Paul writes, we told you beforehand that we were to suffer persecution. And he's using this Greek word philebo. This is where you're going to do your first word study. You're going to go to Blue Letter Bible. You're going to imitate the steps that we followed in the example I just gave to try to understand a little bit more about what this word means. What kind of suffering or what kind of persecution? Does it always mean persecution, or is it just suffering in general? And I suggest that in this instance, you might do well also to look at the related noun. So philebo is a verb, but there is a related noun, thlipsis. You can kind of hear how they're similar. Thlipsis is a noun, and it actually gets used quite a bit more than the word philebo. So you can expand the field of cross-references by looking at the noun thlipsis. So I asked 2 questions. So you kind of do that background work, looking at philebo, looking at thlipsis, and then come to these 2 questions. What is this thlipsis? This whatever it is, suffering, persecution? We're not really sure. That Paul seems so concerned about in the letter. Does it have anything to do with eschatological affliction? Maybe you're familiar with this idea. It comes from Daniel chapter 12, that there will be suffering at the end times. That's often called the eschatological affliction. Is Paul talking about that here, or is he talking about something else? And what makes you think that based on your reading of the letter? Why does Paul make a point then of telling the Thessalonians that he warned them ahead of time about these afflictions? And here you're just using your judgment based on your reading of the letter and of finding various clues that you can find as to what he means by thlipsis and why he might have thought that they would need to know about that ahead of time. And there's some element of speculation here. We're trying to reconstruct the fuller circumstances when we really only have one side of the conversation. So that's just the way it goes in exegesis. We try to do the best we can with what we've got. Okay, this is a fairly straightforward question. What kind of tempting is Paul talking about? And again, you're going to get a lot of your answer from the context. You need to read 1 through 3 very carefully and infer what Paul is talking about when he worries about the tempter having tempted them. And then there are a couple of other word study opportunities. One here using the verb stako, which is translated in the NRSV as stand firm. And then the last one comes from investigates the word love using the Greek word agape. So you've got multiple opportunities to use your Blue Letter Bible techniques in this set of exercises. This 5th one, why do Paul's explain his gratitude that the Thessalonians remember him kindly? I'm really looking at the first part of chapter 2 there, where he talks in a way that seems somewhat defensive. He keeps explaining how he's not like he's not like the people who lack integrity, who speak words of guile, or who use deceit and flattery, but rather he's always been straightforward with them. So he's kind of defending himself here. And I'm asking the question, what's going on here? Why is he defending himself? And there again, my lecture notes might be useful to you. I've also put on CAMS the excerpt from a commentary by Abraham Smith that might be useful to you. I haven't read it carefully for quite some time, so I trust Abraham Smith. He's a wonderful exegete, so I'm happy to give that, make that available to you, even having not just reread it recently. It may be that he and I differ on this question of what Paul is up to in 2 Thessalonians 2. Anyway, that should take you through the exercise. I hope this is helpful, and if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email. Goodbye. Oh, I guess I